Hello everyone, welcome back to Coach Craig Sports. Today we are going to be going over some breakout players for this season. So my definition of a breakout player is it's going to be like somebody that first comes on the scene and takes that step up to the next level. So maybe last year they were like a top 15 running back. This year they're going to be like a top 6 running back, something like that. Or they were like a top 50 wide receiver, and this year they're going to be a top 25 wide receiver. Or they were quarterback 20 last year, and this year they're going to be quarterback 10. So pretty much the guys that are taking the next jump. It's a little bit different than what I consider like your classic sleeper. Classic sleeper, I would say, is somebody that's going later in drafts than they should be, or they have a potential to finish way higher than they're being drafted. So breakout, I think, for the most part, is just a player that's going to finish higher than they did last year. They should finish the year a little bit higher than they were being drafted to, obviously, just depending on their value going into the drafts and their ADP. Because like sometimes there'll be breakout players that everybody's drafting a little bit too early. Maybe this year's Kyler Murray. He's being drafted as like quarterback 3 or 4 in most leagues. He could have that big breakout year, but the jump from where he was last year to where he ends up this year, you don't get as much value out of it if you're drafting him as early as a lot of people are this year, because they're trying to find the next Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson kind of in the most recent years. With that being said, I asked the question in the fantasy football discussion group on Facebook, just trying to get some ideas of who people had as their breakout players this year. A lot of people said Calvin Ridley. That's definitely one for this year that's a common theme across the board. He could have a solid year. Obviously, playing across from Julio Jones limits a little bit of his targets, but they do have a lot of targets that opened off in the offense this year. For me, I would say you don't want to take Calvin Ridley as your wide receiver number 1, but if he's your wide receiver number 2, I don't have a problem with that. Obviously, he's got the upside for more than that. There's a lot of wide receivers that came out on this list. The next one people mentioned was DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf is somebody I think that's getting a little too much hype this year. Obviously, he had a solid rookie year, but a lot of people are drafting him ahead of Tyler Lockett. I just don't see it. Lockett's already got the chemistry with Russell Wilson, and I don't know that Metcalf has as high a ceiling as a lot of people want him to have, especially for this year. Darius Slate was another wide receiver that came up on the list. Obviously, if he gets the bulk of the wide receiver targets in New York for the Giants, he could have a good year. Obviously, he kind of came out of nowhere last year as a rookie. But he's also competing with targets with Sterling Shepard and Golden Tate. So I think he's going to be a little bit more volatile. It just depends week to week who has the good matchup. Kyler Murray is one that came up on there. I kind of talked about him a little bit already. Josh Jacobs was one that somebody brought up. Personally, I'm not buying into the Josh Jacobs hype. I think he's going to get carries. I don't think he's going to get as many targets out of the backfield. Obviously, they got Jalen Richard and Lynn Bowden Jr. back there as well. There's also the durability concerns, so he's not somebody I'm buying into real high. So then there's 2 tight ends, Jonah Smith and Tyler Higby. I think I talked a little bit about Tyler Higby before. He's going to be a boom-bust kind of the guy for this year because he had that great end of last year, and he's being drafted as if he's going to break out. And he's kind of drafted in that tight end danger zone where they're like coin flip. You don't know if they're going to work out or not. And then for Jonah Smith's somebody that's being taken real late. He's got great athleticism. He has the chance to be the full-time starter this year with Delaney Walker completely out of the picture. Just depends on how much the Titans throw the ball this year. He could be somebody that breaks out this year. It just depends on how much volume he gets. So if you're looking for a late tight end flyer, you can always take a shot on him. A.J. Brown came up. For me, A.J. Brown kind of already broke out last year, having that great season, great end of last year. So this year for him to break out, he has to pretty much put in a wide receiver 1 performance. He kind of goes back to Jonah Smith. If he gets enough volume, he has the talent to do that. Then we got Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's one of my guys as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about him later. Then T.J. Hawkinson was another guy that got brought up. He had an interesting rookie season. Rookie tight ends usually don't put up great fantasy numbers. A lot of times, second-year tight ends don't put up great fantasy numbers either. He's still competing with targets with Marvin Jones, Kenny Galladay, and Danny Amendola, and DeAndre Swift kind of out of the backfield now. So we'll see what he does. I'm not Like, I'm not too optimistic about him this year. Maybe next year once Marvin Jones moves on and Danny Amendola moves on, I think that's kind of when he'll get the targets. But having Matt Stafford back actually helps him out quite a bit. Then somebody brought up Dwayne Haskins, but they just said they think he's going to be a top 15 quarterback this year. For me, I don't see this. I see it at all. I think Haskins is probably one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, unless he put in a lot of work this summer and got a lot better. For me, I think he's actually a guy that could end up losing his starting spot during the year. Alex Smith's made it all the way back. If you haven't seen the documentary about his leg and all the surgery on that, I definitely recommend checking that out. If you're a little queasy, you might have to close your eyes for some of the parts. It gets a little graphic. But they have him back. They traded for Kyle Allen, who has a familiarity in the system already. So if Haskins struggles, one of those two guys is probably going to come in and take his job. So that's why I'm not too high on that one. And then the last one was DJ Chark. And this person actually said DJ Chark is a top 5 wide receiver. That would be a pretty big stretch for me. I think he could be a decent wide receiver 2 this year. But for him, in order for him to be a wide receiver 1, he'd have to do it on the back of double-digit touchdowns for sure. Which, he's a big red zone threat for Jacksonville. And if Minshew was able to feed him the ball a lot, he could do it. But they also have D.D. Westbrook. They brought in Tyler Eifert, who's a good red zone target as well. So I got 9 players I'm going to talk about all together today. So first guy, my breakout quarterback this year is going to be Gardner Minshew. Last year, he finished, I'm going based off the ESPN scoring here. This was all for PPR leagues scoring and fractional scoring. So he finished as quarterback 19 on here. Last year as a rookie, 16.4 points per game. I think that includes the games that he was only in there part of the game as well. So on average, I believe quarterback 1's averaged about 19 points per game. So he's a little bit lower than that. Looking at his stats from last year, he had a good touchdown to interception ratio, 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He ran the ball quite well, 344 yards, no touchdowns. So a lot of what people have been talking about this offseason is his ability to improvise and scramble. Rushing yards are obviously good for a quarterback. He's a guy that I think he's going to finish higher than he did last year. He's probably going to be a borderline quarterback 1, high-end quarterback 2. So in a super flex league, he's a guy I'm going to be targeting. In a one quarterback league, he's a guy you could use as a streamer, depending on the matchup. But if you look at ESPN, they're projecting him for a couple more yards, for about 400 more yards or so. He's going to play in all the games this year. They have his touchdowns coming down a little bit, but I think his touchdowns could actually go up. So if he gets up to like 27, 28 touchdowns, and then he runs the ball for about 300, 350 yards again, and if he can get a couple rushing touchdowns in there, he's a sneaky play at quarterback for this season. Like I said, with Chark, they brought in Tyler Eifert, so I think that helped Minshew a lot. Then they brought in Laviska Shenault as well in the draft, so I think he's got a little bit more weapons around him. Also, they got Chris Thompson out of the backfield, so instead of dumping the ball down to Leonard Fournette catching the ball and then falling over for 4 yards, if you get the ball in Thompson, he's a great receiver out of the backfield. You can give him the ball, and he's probably going to double the output that Fournette gets you on a reception out of the backfield. So that might help his numbers as well. Once again, their defense is going to be pretty suspect, so he's probably going to be throwing the ball a lot this year. And Jay Gruden is the new offensive coordinator. He did a lot with Andy Dalton. I see a little bit of similarities with Dalton and Minshew, so I think it'll be beneficial for Minshew as well. Then we're going to go to running back. First running back I'm going to talk about is Joe Mixon. Like I said, somebody else already brought him up as well. Last year, averaged about 14 points per game during the season. Joe Mixon last year, he had about 1,100 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, 35 receptions, just under 300 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. I think this year, his second year in the offense with Zach Taylor, I think he's going to have a good season. They're projecting his rushing yards just to be a little bit higher. Obviously, this year you're going to have Jonah Williams come back to the offensive line. That's going to be a big boost for him. If you watch Joe Mixon last year, he had to do so much himself just to get yards. They fed him the ball late in the year. And if you can, I'll go down here, just show some of his performances. Like the second half of last year, so he got over 17 points from week 8 on, besides week 16. And I believe that week 16 is a game he he either had the flu or he was battling like an illness. But you're talking about somebody that put up 17 points per game consistently over that time period. Oh, I'm sorry. Against Pittsburgh, he didn't have as good a game either. So there's 2 games in there. One of them he was sick, and then the other game he had the yards, but he just didn't have a touchdown or anything like that. So obviously you can look here. Most of his touchdowns came in the back half of last year as well. So there is an opportunity for touchdown regression in the positive direction. And for people that owned him last year, they remember him getting off to this slow start. He turned his ankle a little bit too, so that didn't help him at all. Mixon, like I said, last year he finished running back 13. I think he's got a chance to be a top 8 running back for sure this year. So that's what I'm talking about, that breakout. He's going up to the next step. For running back, he's definitely worth the late first-round pick. I've kind of talked about him a little bit in some of my other videos in that like 7 or 8 pick range or later on. If he's there, I've been taking him a lot in mock drafts so far this year. I think he's definitely a guy that can break out for sure. The next guy is somebody that's kind of similar, Miles Sanders. He was a rookie last year, and he split time with Jordan Howard. He broke out last year towards the end of the year when Howard was banged up. Obviously, if you look at last year, he had almost 180 carries and 50 receptions. So he had a good amount of touches for a rookie. This year, he's kind of projected for 70 more carries. He's going to be the workload back this year. And then ESPN's got him down a little bit in receptions. That could be with some of the other talent that Philadelphia brought in as a wide receiver. I think he's still probably got a chance to catch 45, 50 balls. If he does that again, he can put up good numbers there. His rushing numbers are obviously going to go up with more carries, and he should be able to score a few more touchdowns as the ball gets rolling for Philadelphia this year. So last year he finished running back 15. He's definitely got a chance to be top 10 or higher running back with the top 5 ceiling upside if everything comes together. We'll look at a couple of his games last year. So he was a little streaky here down, but when he's splitting carries, say a couple of big games but he's a guy that he can make a big play. This year he's going to be like the discount version of Saquon Barkley. On any play, he can make a huge play, and he's going to have a little bit of safety there with his carry load as well. So if you're in the end of round 1, beginning of round 2, if you were looking for that guy that could end up being like similar to Saquon Barkley, that's Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is going to be your guy. Then the next guy I got, so my third running back, I got David Montgomery. He is running back 24 this year. His ADP's been around that range as well. Obviously, if you look at his rookie stats last year, they're not that great. He had 242 carries, 3.7 yards per carry, 25 receptions, 1 touchdown there. So he has 7 total touchdowns. There's a lot of information out there about Montgomery. A lot of people are high on him this year as well. Obviously, a lot of leagues he's going in like he's like a 5th round pick. So he doesn't even have to be your running back 2. He could be your flex running back, but he's going to provide running back 2 value at least. He finished running back 24 last year. I think he finishes probably closer to like running back 16 to 18 range this year, as he's still going to get the carries. I think his yardage is going to get a little bit better. He can probably get a couple more touchdowns, especially if Nick Foles is the quarterback and they move the ball down the field a little bit better than Trubisky did last year. And he has the opportunity to get a couple more catches out of the backfield potentially as well. We're going to go over to wide receiver. First guy we got here at wide receiver is going to be Marquis Hollywood Brown. Obviously, he's the top receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. So he's been known as a big play threat, burner guy down the field. Last year he played, he had surgery before the year. He played with a screw in his foot, so it limited a lot of his playing time. If you look at last year, he had 46 catches, just under 600 yards, 7 touchdowns. So last year he's brought up a lot by his touchdowns. This year he should be on the field a lot more, so you should see more opportunities. They're only projecting him for about 18 more catches, about the same amount of touchdowns, and end up being about 30 targets. He's Lamar Jackson's favorite target, so he's going to throw him the ball as much as he can. If you look at some of his games last year, he's pretty streaky. He had double-digit games in some of them, and then the rest of them were kind of like 8 points or under. So he's not a guy that you want to draft too highly. You're probably going to be able to draft him as your wide receiver, 3 or 4 in the draft. If he puts it all together, he could be a wide receiver 2 value by the end of the year. But he definitely has a chance to break out. The only big thing that could potentially derail him is if they bring in Antonio Brown, who they've been linked to a little bit. But with that being said, Antonio Brown is already suspended for 8 games this year, and pending the civil suit, he could be suspended for more games as well. Then the second wide receiver I have is Will Fuller. Will Fuller's on the Texans. Obviously, I'm a Texans fan. Will Fuller's kind of been frustrating to watch over his first couple of years. He's a guy that's been he's been hurt a lot. When he was starting to put it all together the one year, he looked real good. He is going to probably be a wide receiver 2 in fantasy over the course of the year. He ended up scoring a touchdown towards ACL when the Dolphins defender fell on his knee. Kind of crappy how it worked out. But last year he came back. He did all right. He had one of the best games in fantasy football for a wide receiver in recent memories. When he played against Atlanta, I think 14 catches, over 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. As you see here, that was a good percentage of his catches and a good percentage of his, about a sixth of his yards, and all of his touchdowns pretty much came in one game. So he's kind of a boom bust guy. Like I just said in my last video, I was kind of comparing him to Amari Cooper. But Will Fuller already has chemistry with Deshaun Watson. DeAndre Hopkins is gone now. They brought in Brandon Cooks and Randall Cobb. But I think Fuller's going to be the number 1 wide receiver for the Texans this year. He's definitely got wide receiver 2 upside, maybe wide receiver 1 upside if he really hits his ceiling. Last year he finished wide receiver 53. It wasn't pretty last year. You look back here at the game. So this is the game versus Atlanta. He had 53.7 fantasy points. He was also over double digits 3 times. So he's probably not going to kill you. Especially this year, he's going to get more targets, especially with Hopkins gone. So, where you get him in drafts, he's going to be 6th, 7th round. He's probably going to be a wide receiver 3 or 4. He's definitely got the upside to be a wide receiver 2 or better. If he hits his ceiling, maybe a wide receiver 1 if he can stay healthy for the whole year. And the last guy I got is Anthony Miller. Anthony Miller was wide receiver 56. According to the scoring last year, he had 52 catches, 656 yards, 2 touchdowns. So you kind of look at this 84 targets, 52 receptions out of there. It's not the best catch rate. Some of that might be credited to Trubisky. If Nick Foles is the starting quarterback this year, Foles generally likes to throw to the slot guy. Miller kind of excels in the slot, so that could be a good pairing there. It could hurt Allen Robinson as well. We'll look back to some of his games here for Anthony Miller. He had a little stretch here where he is very consistent. So the beginning of the year, he's banged up. He had, I believe, a shoulder injury going in the year. The first couple games, he barely played at all. They were playing Tariq Cohen in the slot a lot in the beginning of the year. Then he's kind of getting around 9 points a game for a little while here. Then 2 games where he didn't do much, and then he came on double-digit points in about 5 weeks here, and then the last 2 weeks kind of nothing. So overall, I think he's probably a guy. He could get more targets this year, and he could also get more targets, more receptions, and probably have a little bit better chance of scoring touchdowns this year. If I remember correctly, he was a pretty capable receiver in college, especially when it came to scoring touchdowns, so I wouldn't be surprised if he goes up too much there. If Foles is the quarterback, there's a better chance that the Bears' offense stays on the field, and that helps out everyone on the offense. So if it, like Montgomery I talked about before, or Anthony Miller in this case as well. So I think he's a guy, he's getting drafted, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 probably. He's a guy you'll probably be able to put in your wide receiver 3 spot most weeks. And then if he has a good matchup, you can definitely start him for sure. That's it for the wide receivers. Go to tight end. First guy I'll talk about is Mike Gesicki. He started putting it together a little bit at the end of the year last year. He finished as tight end 12 last year. He finished as a tight end 1, but barely. He had 51 catches, 570 yards, 5 touchdowns. So, like an average year. Nothing crazy. He had 11 yards per catch, pretty much, which he's an athletic tight end, so if they're able to use his athleticism a little bit more this year, he could definitely have a big year. If you kind of look at his overall season, he had a couple of big weeks where you see the breakout games. He had 15, 12, 18, 26, 13. So he had about 4 really good weeks. And most of those ones were the ones he scored a touchdown in, besides the game against the Jets, when he had 6 catches. When Preston Williams went down, he did receive a bump in target share. I think Fitzpatrick, wasn't like super comfortable with him, but like over the course of the year, it kind of got a little bit better. Obviously, you see his targets went up around this area after the bye week, especially. I think what a lot of people aren't talking about is Ryan Fitzpatrick's probably going to start the year. I think if Tua comes in halfway through the year or sooner, I don't think Tua is going to be a very good quarterback, especially for fantasy, and I think he's going to struggle right away. But I think he's going to target rookie quarterbacks like to target the tight end a little bit more. So I think he's going to target Gesicki a little bit more in this. But until we really know that, it's hard to know for sure. Gesicki, like I said, he finished tight end 12. You see some of the guys that were ahead of him last year. Gesicki's going real late in drafts, so you could take the upside pick on him. He, like I said, he's got a lot of athleticism. I think it's his third or fourth year in the league now. And that's kind of when a lot of tight ends will make that jump, if they're going to make that jump. But some of these guys that are ahead of him, maybe Jared Cook, Jason Witten's definitely not going to finish ahead of him. So, like, he could move from tight end 12 to tight end 8 or 9 pretty easily, just depending on touchdowns and big plays. Then next guy we got, a lot of people have been talking about lately, Hayden Hurst. Tight end. He was tight end 34 last year. He's playing with the Falcons this year. He's replacing Austin Hooper. So he'll probably work his way into a little bit of Hooper's role there. Probably won't get as many targets as Hooper did. But if you just look at what ESPN's projecting him for, even he had 30 catches last year, 349 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had 11 yards per catch. He's a pretty athletic tight end as well, kind of like Gesicki was. Projecting him for about 54 catches and 4 touchdowns and a little over 600 yards. I'd say that's pretty fair. Obviously, he's a tight. Like I said, he's a tight end that has a little bit of athleticism. He can take a big play every once in a while. He's coming into a good situation, kind of like what I said with Calvin Ridley in Atlanta. Obviously, Austin Hooper's gone, Mohamed Sanu is gone, and you got Todd Gurley coming in and replacing Devonta Freeman. They're going to have Matt Ryan's going to look to the middle of the field to have somebody to throw the ball to. He likes throwing to the middle of the field. Hayden Hurst is probably going to end up being that guy. Could be Russell Gage as well. And he doesn't really have anybody behind him at the tight end position that's going to challenge him. So he's going to have opportunity to succeed. Obviously, they trade a second-round pick for him. So obviously, they think he's worth something. But overall, these are kind of my breakouts players for this year. Like I said, I think they're just guys that are going to finish higher than they did last year. Some of them are being drafted a little bit higher this year because other people are thinking they're going to break out. These are 9 guys that I think have a chance to break out this year. With that being said, just because I think they can break out, the opportunity might not end up falling their way. If that happens, they could finish where they did last year or worse. They could finish a little bit better than last year, but a lot of it's all about opportunity. But with that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this video. If you guys have any other breakout players you'd like to mention, leave them down in the comments below. If you liked and enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed yet, it'd be much appreciated. I know when looking at the analytics, a lot of people that have watched my videos, most of them aren't subscribed right now. So if you're one of those people, like I said, it'd be much appreciated if you did subscribe. If you're a current or new subscriber who hasn't already, hit the notification bell. It'll let you know every time I post a video. If you got any other comments besides breakouts or anything you'd like to see in future videos, let me know down in the comments below. You can also check out Coach Craig Sports page on Facebook. I'll leave a link down below. Check out the Fantasy Football discussion page on Facebook as well. I do post my newest videos to there. I post questions, getting input from the community as well. And with that being said, that's all I got for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and have a great rest of your day.